Hi, I'm Shane Valenzi, and I'm the artistic director of the Gilbert and Sullivan Opera Company and the stage director of our 2024 production of Ruddigore. So, my dad was in the national tour and Broadway production of The Pirates of Penzance. And growing up, he directed 3 high school musicals at a time. I grew up learning directing from watching him do that. He was involved in probably a dozen productions of Pirates, professional and the high school level. The first Gilbert and Sullivan I was in was my high school production of Pirates of Penzance, directed by my dad. And when I went to college, I became the last mentee of a man named Bruce Montgomery, who was, while he was living, he was probably considered the foremost American expert on Gilbert and Sullivan. He ran all the performing arts programs at the University of Pennsylvania. He was, his summer house was where Isadore Godfrey, the D'Oyly Carte opera company, would stay when during their American tours. Monty, as we call him, he actually had Gilbert's original prompt books. They were gifted to him by, I believe it was D'Oyly Carte's granddaughter or niece, but they somehow found their way into his possession. And so when I was in college, I would direct the fall shows of the company, and then I would associate direct the spring shows and play the patter role. And in doing that, I sat there and was able to study Gilbert's original books. There was pictures, notations, drawings. They were sort of fascinating artifacts. And it enabled me, I think, as a result, to fully immerse myself in the old and the new. So with every show, I have the keen awareness both of what the original production would have been, what it would have looked like, what it would have sounded like, who moved where and when and in what manner, the original costumes, the original set, all that stuff that makes a show is in the back of my head somewhere. Also in the back of my head is the brilliance that GNS can be when presented to modern audiences. So the Joe Papp production of Pirates is very much a lodestar for me because it breathed new life into the art form without sacrificing what makes the art form great. As time went by with that production, interestingly enough, some of the things that they changed. For example, the lead soprano was originally cast as a pop star, and as time went by, that role reverted back to an operatic performer. So as people know, they know the Kevin Kline and the Ronstadt version, and that is the version that I know as well. But I also know how that production changed and refined and became something close to what I consider to be a perfect show by the time it closed. Being aware of sort of both of those extremes, I would say, I have developed, I think, what has become sort of my own personal ethos in directing GNS, which is I want the audience to experience what the audience experienced when the shows originally premiered. And what that means is different for every show. There are some shows it means I don't have to change a word. I present it how it was originally done translates just as well today as it did 150 years ago. And to change anything would be a disservice. Other shows, an example of that would be Iolanthe, right? Iolanthe is funnier today than it was 150 years ago. The political jokes are just as poignant, and there's a lot of humor associated with fairies and the wordplay, like that. You don't need to change anything. It's funnier now than it was then. At the same time, there are other shows that are the opposite. So an example of that would be Patience. So Patience is a send-up of the aesthetic poetry movement of the 1880s. Believe it or not, that is not as funny today as it would have been back like when it premiered. What is equally funny, though, is the larger point. Fads are no different now than they were back then. Public fascination with whatever the hot fashion is, whatever the hot musical artist is, whatever the hot TV show is. Human nature doesn't change that much. And so sometimes you need to extrapolate back from the specific reference to a more general reference the audience will identify with, so that they can experience the theater in the same way that they did when the show premiered.